Hello everyone, welcome back all to this channel. Today I'll be covering on the adoption piece of SAP, right? So adoption of SAP can be visualized into two dimensions. One is your macro view and the other one is your micro view. Now what is meant by adoption? It simply means usage, implementation or scope of SAP application, right? To manage your resources in the organization or enterprise. Now what resources are we speaking about? It could be related to raw materials, semi-finished goods, finished goods, etc. Now all these things you can put together, you can call it as stock or inventory, and so along with your inventory or the stock, your enterprise or business organization would also contain space with respect to factory or premises, right, which is called as real estate. And along with that, your organization would also run based on the labor, machinery, vehicles, financial transactions and all this. Now to manage all these resources, we would need a smart, scalable, compatible and feasible ERP application, right? Now that is where SAP is specialized into and provides wide variety of applications, modules to manage all these activities in a single platform. Now with a view to this, let's start understanding the macro view, which is divided into 6 layers or the 6 views. So let's check the first one. Now to understand this, let's try to understand this with a simple example where we can connect easily. Now let's assume you want to start a manufacturing company. It could be any manufacturing company, right? So just to take an example, let's assume you want to start a pen manufacturing company, right? Now to start your business as a macro view, you would need capital, space, machinery, raw materials, distribution channel to sell your products or you to reach the product, your produced product to the final or end consumer or customer, right? So let's start breaking your manufacturing process into 4 major areas. So to begin with, let's assume you want to procure a raw material. To convert your raw material into semi-finished and semi-finished to finished goods, you would lay a production department there. And then after producing or converting your raw material into finished goods, you would also tend to store it somewhere before you making it available those to the end customers, right? Which simply means you procure the raw material, you produce it, then you store it, and then finally you sell it. So for now, let's try to consider only these 4 as major areas, and we'll deep dive in the micro view or in the upcoming sessions, right? Now we understood the first view, that is procurement, production, storage and warehousing. Now coming back to the second view, let's try to drill down the business processes. Whatever business processes we have seen here, let's try to drill down and map those business processes with the SAP modules, right? So if you have to map your procurement, it can be mapped with material management as a SAP module. If you want to map your production, it could be mapped with the production planning in SAP. And if you want to map your storage, it could be mapped with extended warehouse management in SAP. And if you want to map your sales and distribution, you can map it with the sales and distribution module in SAP, right? Now coming to the third view, let's try to map your finance view, right, with respect to the business process, drilling down to the SAP modules, and further your SAP modules being drilled down to the finance view. Let's try to understand what the finance sub modules look like against each of those business processes, right? So when you procure something, you would be liable to pay to your vendors, so it becomes your accounts payable. And when you procure something and you want to produce something, you would definitely need a machinery or a fixed asset to produce or convert your raw materials to finished goods. Then we can consider it to be a fixed asset accounting in SAP. Then once you convert your raw material to finished goods, you would also need to store somewhere. Then we consider that final finished goods into inventory in SAP Finance. And finally you want to sell it or make it available to the end customers, right? So that is where your receivables comes into picture. So this was all about the finance view. Now further, let's try to drill down or break our SAP business process we saw SAP business process being drilled down to SAP modules, and SAP modules being drilled down to finance view. And now coming back to the controlling view, if you try to map all these business processes, then your first comes the prime cost, which is nothing but the accumulation of direct labor, direct material, and the direct overhead. Then making use of this, you move all these resources to the production or the factory, where there you try to convert your raw materials to finished goods, and all the ancillary costs which are incurred at that point of time could be termed as cost of production or cost of goods manufactured, or it could also be called as factory cost. And once you produce something, you move to the warehouse. That is where your other ancillary or incidental cost with respect to the storage and warehousing comes into picture, which is nothing but the inclusion of all the admin costs, can be coined as cost of goods sold. And finally, you definitely want to reach to the end consumer or the customer, right? So the way or means of reaching to the end customer and the cost associated with it will definitely be included into the cost of whatever you have produced, right? So that will be termed as cost of sales. So on this, you will be adding a specific margin which can be termed as a net sale price to the customers, right? So this was all about the controlling view. So now coming back to the consolidated view, this gives a complete comprehensive view of all the drill downs. This was definitely mainly dedicated to the business processes. Procurement is one of the business process. Then we saw production. Then we saw after producing, we need to store somewhere, and after storing, we will be making it available or selling it to the end consumer, right? So this was a business processes, and to drill down the business process into SAP modules, we tried to link the SAP modules against each of these business processes. Now considering material managed can be linked to the procurement, production planning can be linked to production, extended warehouse management can be linked to storage and warehousing, and sales and distribution can be linked to this sales and distribution channel. Coming back to the finance view, we need to link all our payables to the vendors from whom we have procured something, and then we have fixed asset where all our production planning and production activities would take place, and then comes our inventory. All our finished goods would be stored somewhere, and that becomes our inventory management. And finally the accounts receivable to whom we have sold, right? Then coming back or drilling down further to a costing, we saw prime cost associated here, we saw cost of production associated till the production or the factory level, and then we saw cost of goods sold, and then the finally cost of sales. On this we'll be adding up a final markup price or a percentage of profit, and then the final selling price would be determined, right? So this was all about the macro view, a comprehensive consolidated view. Now coming back to the view 5, let's check the business processes involved during the procurement, that is material management module, right? So let's check this in detail in the next session. So that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed today's session. Looking forward for more participation, feedback and comments. Stay tuned with us, and please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Thank you all.